There's something about people that took me years to understand, and once I saw it, a lot of situations in my life suddenly made sense. So when I was younger, I'd always assumed that if someone was friendly towards you, they were your friend, and that if you treated people fairly, they would do the same in return. And of course, that all sounds perfectly reasonable, but it isn't always accurate because not everyone interacts in good faith. In fact, some people are playing a completely different game. And if you don't realize that, you can end up confused, hurt, or even blindsided because you're reacting honestly to someone that never was. So I first saw this clearly at high school. There was a guy in my friend group, same classes, same sports teams, and on the surface, he was one of the lads. But what I originally failed to recognize was how he operated. He had this habit of suggesting jokes or proposing pranks and generally encouraging mischief, but he was never the one actually doing it. And because I had a mischievous sense of humour and, like most kids, just wanted to be liked, I often went along with it, which meant that I took the detentions, the consequences, and the labels, all while he stayed clean. And at the time, I thought that was just how things worked. But my dad saw it very clearly. And one day he sat me down and said, "Listen, son, he's basically loading the gun and letting you buy the bullets. So from now on, anything he asks you to do, say no." So I did. And something interesting happened, which is that almost immediately the friendliness faded, the jokes stopped, and eventually hostility surfaced because once I was no longer useful, the mask slipped. And that was the first time that I understood something important, which is that when manipulation stops working, hostility often replaces it. However, at the time, I thought that was just a school experience, but years later, I started seeing similar patterns in adult environments, such as workplaces and competitive spaces where the stakes were much higher. And it usually started with over the top friendliness and instantaneous brotherhood, covertly followed by undermining positioning and subtle erosion. And what confused me the most about it was that I wasn't competing with them, but they were competing with me for status, approval, and security. And because I didn't recognize that a game was being played, I kept losing without understanding why. Because I'd always assumed that we're all here to do the job well, we're all on the same team, and therefore we should all want the same outcome. But not everyone sees the world that way, and instead, some people see relationships as leverage, people as tools, and situations as something to win. And that doesn't make them villains as such. It just means that they're operating on a completely different framework. And if you don't recognize that, then you become vulnerable. So, growing up, I was always taught that you should treat others how you want to be treated. And that's generally understood to mean be nice and give people the benefit of the doubt. But over the years, what I've realized is that kindness without boundaries isn't virtue, it's exposure. And awareness isn't cynicism, it's protection. And this doesn't mean that you should become paranoid or distrust everyone. It simply means that you should observe behavior and not just listen to words. And it also means taking notice of patterns, such as how someone reacts when you say no, how they behave when they don't get their own way, and who benefits when something goes wrong. Because even though charm can be convincing initially, patterns ultimately reveal who someone really is. And yes, it's taken me years and some very painful consequences to see this clearly because it meant admitting how many situations I misunderstood, how long I stayed loyal where loyalty wasn't mutual, and how much time and energy I gave away through assumption. But once you finally see the pattern, you can't unsee it. And when that happens, something shifts and you stop blaming yourself for other people's strategy. you stop mistaking performance for sincerity and you start moving through the world with much clearer vision. And I'm not sharing this to attack anyone or to live in the past. I'm sharing this because learning this has changed how I navigate my own interactions and relationships with other people. And if this helps someone else to avoid confusion, self doubt, or unnecessary fallout, then for me, the lessons would have been worth learning, especially if one day my own children experience something similar, because I don't want them to be suspicious of the world, but I do want them to be aware. I'm Andy Gates, and this is Between Worlds. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.